Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is the Oracle, Dave Schofield, coming at you. It's Tuesday night. It's just after 9 p.m. Where else would you rather be, Steelers fans? And with me, as always, except when he's not, is my big brother, Rich. Rich, how's it going tonight?
It's going okay tonight.
Okay. You're making me wait for it.
Everybody have fun tonight.
Are you actually referring to the song, or are you referring to Fraser Crane on Cheers?
Fraser Crane on Cheers.
Yeah. It's like, I gotta love it. Dude, that felt weird. For those of you that are wondering, I did wear my Oracle shirt tonight. For those of you listening in podcast form, in audio form. That you can't see it. I'm just saying that. That's how I introduced myself tonight. That didn't sound right, but bottom line is I'm trying to I'm trying to be able to talk and take everything away without saying the title, without saying what I am with the website, because in case this is your first podcast that you've caught in almost a week, we made an announcement last Thursday that SB Nation decided to basically gut the biggest part of their podcast platform. They're keeping a few of them on, but they're letting most of them go. We were one of the ones who were let go, which was surprising because we were the number one podcast in all of 2020 for SB Nation. But we ended up as, not to steal Jeffrey's thunder, but on the cutting room floor. If you want to know more about that, you could go back to Thursday night's preview. Or we did an audio-only podcast, Jeff Bryan and I, to announce it. Don't panic. Don't worry. Nothing's going to change. The way SB Nation has it is that our feed stays with us, supposedly, which means, well, definitely our YouTube feed does. So you all don't have to worry about that. But it's going to be a different name come March 1st. It's not going to be Behind the Steel Curtain. We will let you all know that name shortly as we iron a few things out. But we are not going away. You will still be able to find us exactly where most of you find us anyway, on YouTube, Facebook Live, if you're here with us now. And if you're with us on the audio side, we'll still be on all the same places, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, was it Stitcher? I don't even know. I do Apple Podcasts. I don't even know what they are after that. So just to sum that up, Rich, you want to have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I do. Hey, Wes, SB Nation did not do away with BTSC, the website. They did away with BTSC, the podcast.
The podcast.
So the podcast will be moving.
Which, I mean, I don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, but at the same time, podcasts seem to be more on the up and up than the stuff, than websites. But so maybe we don't know exactly why they picked who they picked. If you listen to any other SB Nation podcast, especially some of them were cut. I mean, my goodness, I was listening to one just to try to get to know some of the other people because that were in the same boat, and one was. I listened to one because it was the person who was in charge of the NHL, the websites for the NHL. All but 6 of those websites got cut. Pennsburg did make the cut, for those of you that also like to go there. Not their podcast, but they'll be going with us. They'll be in the same place that we're landing at. We'll have more on that in the future. But any SB Nation podcast out there that doesn't want to stop doing what they're doing, we have a way for them to keep doing that here at Behind the Steel Curtain. I'm saying Behind the Steel Curtain now because that's who we are for now, but those the podcast formerly known as Behind the Steel Curtain. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Steelers, but I want to bring up, we got a super chat. This is from D-Generation X, who I'll say it at the end, says, give this guy a thumbs up. I think he meant these guys. A thumbs up. They work hard at what they do. And I'm Biggie Bronco. For those of you that know Biggie Bronco that's in there in our live chats at times, I guess that's a new name. Hey, people were changing names. It's all right. You just got to say who you were and who you're going to be because we're in the same boat. But therefore, I'm just trying to get used to it. Rich, have you ever noticed this? Jeff Hartman says that if you play the BTSC drinking game with one Brian Anthony Davis, every time he says some form of it in a podcast, you won't make it to the end. I don't think that's the case anymore.
I saw that on the Slack channel the other day pop up where Jeff put that in there, and I was in my office and laughed out loud, and the person in the office next to me was like, "What?" And I was like, "Just read something funny."
Just read something funny. Mark Tobin, the answer is no. The answer is definitively no when it comes to YouTube, and it is we were told no when it comes to even the podcast form. They just have to get everything with behind the scenes done, that we get to take our feed with us wherever we go, and we're actually, we're getting that all set up right now, and it's going. Not only is it going to be fine, it's actually going to be kind of exciting for us. It really is. But we just want to prepare you all that it'll be a different name. And the stuff with SB Nation has been in the news, and some people were concerned. There were some people that reached out to us right away, curious about stuff. We're like, well, we'll let you all know. But we didn't want to keep people hanging that were wondering because they heard about that in the news several weeks ago. But you know what? We're going to be all right because you all were all right. You all rock. That's the thing. We had the super chat that says these guys work hard at what they do. Well, we do, but we only do it because of you all. It really is because of you all. So that's it. Just Me wants to know, where's Tony going? Tony's not going anywhere. Tony is still with us, but Tony's schedule changed based on a job change for him outside of what he does here. So therefore he's been away from the Hangover for a while, but he'll be back on the Hangover. Mm-hmm. He's had to step away from his six-pack show. But Tony's not going anywhere. Tony just has to change up his schedule. And if Tony's definitely not going anywhere from the website, as long as we got that, because do you enjoy Tony's writing? Tony's different. Tony's written word. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure out of everyone at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com that he has been writing there the longest. He predates Jeff. Yeah. So he really brings it there, and he'll stir the pot a lot, which is great. So this was pretty funny that Wes says, I was Wes, I'm going to be Wes. So we don't have to talk. That's just kind of tying a bow on some things for those of you that, that might not have been here or been there Thursday. We don't want to talk about this a bunch. We want to talk about the Steelers. That's right. And we're not even going to dive into a bunch of news. And here's why. We have an audio only podcast. It started this morning where Jeff Hartman, he's done a couple of them. It might not necessarily always be Jeff because we don't want it to all fall on the same person all the time. We want to give you a 5-minute Steelers update podcast every morning. You wake up, you want to know what's happened with the Steelers. The most important thing, boom, 5 minutes. You can listen to it while you're cooking your breakfast, while you're eating your breakfast, while you're I don't think you can do it. I was going to say while you're in the shower, if you can hear it in the shower. I was going to say I don't think you can do it while you're blow drying your hair. Probably wouldn't be able to hear it. When I listen to podcasts, what's that? Well, I don't have it here, so I was going
to say I was going to be really nice right now and be like, "That was hilarious, Dave."
You would have to do a 5-second podcast in order for my hair to be dry. But I listen to my podcast. Believe it or not, I put my headphones in when I'm shopping. That way, I don't have to listen to other people talk. I could just go through the aisles and do my grocery shopping and not have to worry about it and listen to podcasts. So, so we don't have to jump into a bunch of news. Jeff talked this morning about the whole Brian Flores hiring tomorrow, and there's not a lot of Steelers news right now. So we'll cover some other things. He covered a high profile mock draft, I think was one of the things that he had that you'll get tomorrow morning. Some good stuff there. So that kind of frees us to jump right into what we're going to talk about, Rich. And we're going back and forth, offense and defense, to give you all a little reminder in case this is your first time tuning in. We're just picking position groups, and we're doing the style of show that we do during the season. And that is being on Tuesday, we look back and then we look forward. We're the transition show. So we're transitioning with position groups. We've been going back and forth with offense and defense. Last week it was running back, which that was a lot of fun, just talking about how much better the running back situation has gotten year after year after year.
Yeah.
We're asking about the third, about RB3. Last year we were asking about RB2. The year before we were asking about RB1. So it's really nice to just be concerned about that. So now we're getting to a position group that, my goodness, 2 seasons ago was the best in the NFL for the Steelers. Well, hold on. I guess it would be 3 seasons ago, not over the last 2 seasons, but before that, 2020. They were actually, so I guess technically it would be in there's been 2 seasons since then. That's the way I'm thinking of it. We're getting into the defensive line tonight.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to dive, because there's been a lot of change. Let's look at last year. What was the biggest change we saw I kind of saw coming, but ended up affecting the Steelers last year when it came to the defensive line, Rich? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
I am talking about a retirement. Because I think June 1st was a Wednesday, and it was Tuesday night on our show.
Funny.
I mentioned about the next day being June 1st, and it could be an issue. And dag nabbit, I was right. I didn't want to be, but I was.
Yeah, you're right. It was the retirement.
Yeah.
See,
and
I get
Sherry's got it. Sherry's got it. She knew it was because it was the retirement of Stephon Tuitt.
Right, but see, to me, I don't even think of the retirement, because it wasn't just 1 year that we had him missing. It had actually been for 2 years. But
that was the finality of it, wasn't it? Because it was still a question all off season, like, is he really going to come back or is he not? What kind of player is Stephon Tuitt going to be if he does? So in essence, it answered all the questions. And even though, I really hope Stephon Tuitt is doing well. It's been almost a year since his retirement. I don't like follow him on social media or anything like that, because I just don't. That's not my thing. Hopefully he's doing well. Hopefully his family is healing, and hopefully, man, that they could still continue to get some answers, because, man, that was a tragic situation. And I hope his body is now going to be where he can move forward with life, and he's not going to have serious repercussions with his time in the NFL moving forward. So still wish him the best of luck. Man, that dude. Listening to Jeffrey Benedict talk about, was it Jeffrey Benedict? Yes, he was talking about the Steelers' offensive line this morning on the cutting room floor.
Yeah,
and he was talking about he mentioned Stephon Tuitt as a defensive lineman, because he was talking about that being the kind of guy, and how, the kind of player about Kevin Dotson could do well against. Someone who's just going to come at you hard, and you have to go at him hard, and you just have to beat him. But he was like, I don't know that he could take Tuitt, because that was Stephon Tuitt. He just bullied people. But he retired. And that it did help. I mean, it did change the Steelers' salary cap situation, but they basically were bringing back two defensive linemen from the year before that played significantly, in Cam Hayward and Chris Wormley. Now, I think you and I were on the same page about a year ago, that we're like, man, if Chris Wormley could be your first guy in off the bench,
yes,
that would be so much better. And boy, he had such a better year this year than he did the year before, in my opinion, coming off the bench. Not the flashy numbers, but that's not what you expect. But play in, play out, in my opinion, especially against the run, because the whole thing was, Wormley can't play the run. Wormley was actually one of their better run defenders on the defensive line last year.
Yeah, because he kind of came in as the rotational piece, helped him to be able to stay fresh. I often wonder if it just wasn't that he had the feeling that, the world wasn't on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
he was it was like he took the attitude of I am to come in and do my job, and he came in and did his job and did it well. So
yeah, and that's the thing. And I have a question here of Wes is like, how much does Wormley cost? Right now, nothing. He's a free agent. So how much would he cost? That would just be speculation for the Steelers to bring him back. He's no longer under contract. And then he got hurt, in the next to last game of the season. ACL surgery. You hate that for someone at the end, especially going on a contract year, because there's a good chance he's not ready to start the year next year. We'll get into that a little bit when we go to look forward. So it was Cam, Wormley, Tyson Alualu was coming back off of injury. The Steelers did re-sign Montravis Adams going in last year, but then they went out and made the signing of Larry Ogunjobi. Now that we see what the Steelers did to build that team, so they continue, and they drafted DeMarvin Leal. Can't throw that there. So you've got the young guys like Loudermilk and Leal. You've got a Montravis Adams that's been around from team to team. They got him off of a practice squad. You've got Alualu, long in the tooth in terms of football, coming off of a ankle injury. Cam Hayward, Wormley, and Larry Ogunjobi. So they kind of did things looking at, all around, keeping guys, drafting guys, signing guys.
It looked really patchwork. But I think the Steelers were really deliberate in what they were, when they went to get guys, especially when they signed Larry O and when they drafted Leal. They were looking very, very specific. Like they were like, hey, these are the kind of guys that kind of fill what we need.
Yeah.
So although at first I was like, oh my goodness, the defensive line, it's going to be awfully patchwork. They're going to be terrible, especially against the run. And they were good. They were fine.
Yeah.
They were not, I thought if there was going to be a real area weakness on the Steelers, it might be the defensive line, and they were not a real big area of weakness.
Especially as the season rolled on.
Yes.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't, I don't know that I'd say they got pushed around.
Let's rephrase that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You said as the season wore on. Actually, in my opinion, the defensive line played a lot better when TJ Watt was in the lineup.
Yeah, that it just everyone played better when TJ Watt was in the lineup.
No, but it was like there were times when TJ Watt was out of the lineup, I felt some of the defensive linemen felt and were trying to do more.
Yeah.
And I get it, because when TJ Watt's out, everybody's probably trying to do more. But sometimes when
Hayward said that was his, that was part of his problem.
Sometimes when you try to do more, you can actually end up doing less. I'm pretty sure it was the first Ravens game. Cam Hayward said that about that. Before I lose this, I want to bring it up and answer it, because just to follow up, Wes says, what was his cost? Yeah, I got that. Wormley had signed a 2-year deal for $4.5 million, because of the way they do the signing bonus and everything. He was paid 2.2 the first year, 2.3 the next, but the way it worked was it was 1.6 cap the first year, 2.9 cap the second year. That's not expensive for what they paid him for those 2 years. That was not expensive at all. So my thing is, I feel like over those 2 years, you got a 1.6 million for 2021, probably got your value for 1.6. In 2022, he was 2.9. You probably got your value in 2022 because he played better when he did count more on the cap. And when it comes to Wormley, because we're going to talk about that moving forward, to me, I think he's the kind of guy that the Steelers say, hey, you think you're going to be ready partway through the season? We'll sign you for the vet minimum, put you on PUP until you're ready.
That way you continue to train, you can continue to get the medical help that you need with everything, rehab with us, come back when you're back, finish it, play the rest of the season once you're ready to play in the role that you were, and then you can hopefully be back to the same place that you were next year, going into free agency, but not coming right off the injury. That would be the Steelers doing him a favor. And I don't see the downside in that very much. I don't think it would, the word's escaping me. Veteran salary benefit contract, which means they actually pay him a certain amount and he counts less towards the salary cap than what that amount actually is. Yeah. If he's willing to do that, because if someone else wants to go ahead and pay him now, even though he's hurt, fine. I get it. I understand. But I could see the Steelers coming in later in the process, because their philosophy also is you're a Steeler until you're not. So until March 15th rolls around and you sign with another team, even if it's March 25th rolls around, you haven't signed with another team, you're a Steeler until you're not. So they're probably going to continue to take care of him until he signs somewhere else, or then finally say, hey, Worm, listen up. This is what we can do. So, but I don't think he should be in the Steelers' plans next year, because you just don't know if he'll be healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't put him in there and say, oh, we don't have to worry about defensive line because we got our first guy off the bench. No, because he's probably not going to be there the first part of the year at least. But
you also have some young guys. You really do. Yes, so looking at last year, I also wanted to say, you said about they weren't raised. They didn't get pushed around. Didn't it feel like they were getting pushed around at the end of 2021?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were getting pushed.
And there were times that it seemed like they got pushed around.
Pushed off the line. And they had some times this year, yes, where it felt like they were getting pushed around a bit. But overall, they did a fantastic job of as you could say, of holding the line.
Yeah. It's the infamous surge. On offense, you want to surge. You want to push them back. And on defense, it's nice if you get some surge a yard in your direction, but even just holding the line is sufficient. Something here, I want to bring this up because Mark Tobin says, cut Wormley and Spillane, sign Sutton. You can't cut Wormley and Spillane. They're free agents. You say, I understand to say don't sign them, but it's not like you're gaining anything towards the salary cap because they're not costing anything. They're not under contract. So maybe cut ties is perhaps what he meant there. But honestly, I don't think the Steelers are going to cut ties with Robert Spillane. You know why? They don't have much else at the position right now. And even if they upgrade otherwise, I don't see them. Especially in this draft, I don't see the Steelers going into the draft with a really big need anywhere. That's what they're going to do, what they try to do every year, except they weren't able to really do in 2021, and that is fill their needs. So let's talk about that. Do you want to go ahead and talk about moving forward?
Yes, let's move
So
forward.
Let's talk about filling that need on the defensive line. Okay. Because a lot of guys, a lot of free, you got Cam Hayward under contract. You got Montravis Adams for contract for one more year. You've got the rookies in not the rookies, sorry. The rookie contract guys is what I mean. I've been thinking so much contracts. I've been taking all these guys on their rookie deals and bunching them together in Loudermilk and Leal. And technically you have another one that I'm in the middle of getting ready to do his stuff for my exit interviews for tomorrow's. Is the Steelers signed another one off the Jets practice squad at the end of last year, but never had him active. Another defensive lineman when Wormley went down. So that they had him, he was inactive, and they weren't having anyone like Loudermilk or someone inactive either. And they had someone like Rennell Wren that was coming up, being elevated off the practice squad when they wanted more defensive linemen. So you've got some of these younger guys. Tyson Alualu, he's a free agent, and I don't know any reason to say Tyson. To me, it's like, hey, it's been a great career. We appreciate everything you did. We're glad you could be here with us. enjoy retirement. Maybe
Yeah.
he's not ready to retire, but honestly, it's his opportunities in the NFL might kind of force him into that.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. Definitely, you think of the guys we have who are free agents. He is one, and he is one that I'm like, yep, not real worried about. The bigger question, of course, is Larry O.
Yes. That's a big one. So you got Larry O. So how big of a priority is it for the Steelers to re-sign Larry Ogunjobi?
That is the big question.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, that's really the question. Like, I'm not sure about. I'm not sure how big I think it's a priority, but I don't know how big a priority for the Steelers to do that.
I think it's a priority to sign a Larry Ogunjobi type player.
Correct.
Whether it's Larry O or whether it's someone else, it will ultimately be the factor. Now, people already mentioned in the live chat. I was going to wait. We'll go ahead and bring it up now, even though we haven't even done our break. And that's one Javon Hargrave, Gravedigger, former third-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, gone on to Philadelphia. The season that dude is having and the postseason he is having, he has basically played himself out of any chance for Steelers fans for him to come back. I hate to break it to you. I know you would love it, but that dude is going to get paid. He's going to get paid. I mean, so much so I would not be shocked. I don't know who else they have. I don't know who else they would do it for. I would not be shocked if the Philadelphia Eagles used a franchise tag on him.
Yep.
That's the kind of player he's been. But they're so loaded at that position. I mean, they even got the guy Jeffrey Benedict wanted to not go to the Ravens that he knew wasn't going to make it to the Steelers last year. That Philly traded up to grab the defensive help me out, live chat. You know who I'm talking about. He actually got hurt against the Steelers and ended up on IR, but then he ended up coming back. I know someone will help me out. He doesn't play on this. See, this is what happens when draft stuff happens. And you forget about guys sometimes that don't go to the Steelers. But this was one that a lot of people would have really liked if the Steelers could have got him, but he wasn't going to be there. Thank you, Sherry Richards. That would be Jordan Davis. Right? She was the first one who got it. A bunch of the other ones are jumping in there too. Thank you. I knew it was there. Jordan Davis. They have him. They still have Fletcher Cox. They have a number of guys on that defensive front. So I don't know if they'll be able to afford to bring Hargrave back, especially if they're going to have to re-sign their quarterback. But man, oh man, I don't think they want to lose him. That dude's had a season. I mean, he really has. So yeah. I don't know if he is available after all, and then how much the Steelers could really do. The Steelers don't have the cap space right now, but they have plenty of opportunity to create it. So I'm not going to be one of those people like, oh no, the Steelers are in trouble. Yeah, they have $500,000 right now. Really, that's all they have. But they have a lot. They have other contracts you can get rid of. Don't think Mitch Trubisky is going to be one of them. That's a whole different subject that we'll get to another time. But I don't see William Jackson III staying the way he is. And I've covered all that in plenty of my articles. But the Steelers can they can get some cap space, but they're not going to be able to go that big in free agency because I think Javon Hargrave is going to be one of the biggest names out there.
Here's my question when it comes to Larry O. How did Larry O like playing with Cam Hayward?
Yeah. I didn't hear much from Larry O. Did you?
No, because basically he stayed fairly quiet. Let the other guys that have been there for longer do most of the talking, and he just went out there and did work.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I really like.
He didn't practice very much because he was always dinged up.
I I really liked he and Cam Hayward together.
Yeah,
I did.
I did.
I thought they were. That's the closest Cam has been to having a. I don't want to say like. I'm going to say caliber. A Stephon Tuitt caliber player.
Yes.
Since the last time Stephon Tuitt was on the field.
Because, I mean, think about that. In 2020, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and Tyson Alualu, they were the best defensive front. Like, if you look, sometimes the numbers and everything, they don't tell you quite as much. But if you wanted to look at their PFF scores, like I say, remember, PFF is an opinion. It's an educated opinion because they look at every player on every play, so they educate themselves, but it's still an opinion. But in their opinion, all three of those guys, I'm pretty sure were in the top 20 of defensive linemen for the league. Yes. When you got all three guys in the top 20, my goodness, that's something crazy. Yeah. So that it was. Now, can the Steelers get back to that kind of good? Maybe. Maybe they can if they can get the right pieces going. Can you get maybe a little bit more of a jump from a Loudermilk or a Liao? Maybe. I think those are guys that are going to be able to add depth to you. But I think they need that other guy with Cam one way or the other. And I think the best way to get it is probably going to be free agency.
Yeah. And honestly, I think the best way to get it potentially is to re-sign Larry Ogunjobi.
He's probably, yes, but easiest way to do it.
That comes down to things, how did Larry O like playing with the Steelers? How did he like playing with Cam Hayward? How did he like the defensive scheme? There's a lot of things in that were not.
Was he happy here?
Right.
Was he happy in Pittsburgh? Bottom line, if you're happy enough in Pittsburgh, you want to stick around. If you're not, then I get it. If he leaves, I hope he makes a killing because of compensatory formula. And some people are like, no, but I want the Steelers to be buyers. I think that they might not be as much. I'd love for Mason Rudolph to get a huge contract. That would help compensatory formula, things like that. If Cam Sutton doesn't stay, I hope it's because he makes a ton. That's how I kind of feel about someone like a Cam Sutton or a Larry Ogunjobi. I want them to stay. Terrell Edmonds, DeMonte KZ, those guys, I want them to stay in Pittsburgh. Those main four. But if they don't, I hope they really, really, really get something. Kind of like Bud Dupree when he left. If you're going to go, get a big contract to go. So that's really interesting. Yeah. So, let's take our break real quick because we have a little bit more to talk about. It's going to be really late in the show. We're not going to have that much, we're not going to go as late tonight just because we didn't talk about news at the beginning. So if you're here with us on YouTube and Facebook, we'll be back in a couple seconds. And here on the audio side, stick around. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we're rolling on talking about the defensive line. So we talked about Larry Ogunjobi. Your call, Rich, is you'd want him to stay.
Yes.
Would you like to see him stay for how big, how long? In other words, he was here for 1 year, $8 million last year.
All right.
Okay.
He's how old? 20.
You know what? That is a great question. Give me just a second and I'll have that answer. Okay. But yeah, he's he is 28. He will turn 29 on my oldest son's birthday. He will be 29 in June.
Bam, I'm good. Man.
Yeah. Right. But remember, it's one thing to bring in an outside guy over 30. This is a guy turning 29 that did spend a year with the Steelers already.
Correct. But I was looking at that to figure out how long do you go? I'd go 3 years.
Okay.
That would put him to 32. What do we pay him this year?
$8 million.
I'd go 3 years, 27.
Did you look in the live chat?
No.
Sherry Richards.
Nice, because
27.
then I'd structure a salary bonus so that the first year he might, you could work that salary bonus, that signing bonus out and spread out some, and mess with your contract years. I figured they'd probably want to have him sitting at about $7 million at the most on the last year. Maybe even $6 million.
Or you bump that number up knowing that you might not keep him around for it.
Correct.
I know that is what it is, but sometimes that happens. If you look at Spot Rack, that's one of the salary cap sites. They sometimes give you a calculated market value. Sometimes they're all over the place. You know what they have for Larry Ogunjobi?
What's that?
$8 million.
Okay.
Which is what he played last year, which means that was fair. I'd even be okay if it was 2. If you go,
I said 3 and 27.
Yeah.
I almost said 3 and 25.
Yeah. I mean, think about 2 for 16. Think about 2 for 16. Where you give him, let's say he's got a $2 million base salary, $6 million signing bonus.
Here's why I think
$8 million base salary the next year. Hold on. That would make him count $5 million this year and 11 the next. And then you just go from there. But yeah, I mean, if you feel like my biggest concern, honestly, is that how little he could practice because of injury the second half of the season. That's the only concern I have with Larry O.
I feel teams are going to offer him 3 years, which is why we'll have to offer him 3 years. Which
I could get that as well.
Yeah.
Yep. I could see it, but I'd like to see him back. So the question is, though, if the Steelers are willing to offer, let's say, 3 years and $25 million for Larry O, what are they going to get if it's not Larry O if they're willing to pay the same amount? That's the key. If you can get someone who you feel is better than Larry O for the same amount, you can do that. You also don't want to have to settle for someone who's not as good, and then you have to pay him as much money as you were willing to pay Larry O as well. Those are good questions. Speaking of which, I got another question. Still haven't addressed the other elephant in the room. They're only on the field about 25% of the time, 25, 30% of the time. What about nose tackle?
What about nose tackle?
How should the Steelers be looking at the nose tackle position for 2023?
They shouldn't. You got.
No, I mean, you can have someone. I mean, I'm not talking about outside. Are you talking about look at who you got? Are you talking about looking at free agency? Are you talking about looking at the draft? You've got to do something to have a nose tackle.
You've got the guys that can play nose tackle.
Mm-hmm.
You got probably 2 of them if you really want to get technical with it.
Other than Adams, who's the other one?
Loudermilk can play.
Okay. See, Loudermilk was almost when he was first drafted. There was some of the Steelers beat reporters that thought he was an outside linebacker based on some of his stuff. They weren't sure what he was going to be, and then you get the same kind of deal with Leal. Those are guys that are on the outside. I would not be shocked if the Steelers do draft a player this year that is a Javon Hargrave mold, meaning not like, oh, he's that good, meaning he is someone who can play nose tackle, but is also skilled enough, doesn't have to play the 0 and the 1 technique, could also play the 2 or the 3 in sub package. That was the great thing about Javon Hargrave. He was out there, and you basically had a 3-man rotation at defensive tackle with him and Tuitt, and they had someone else at the time. I can't remember going back at it too much. But when all 3 of them were out there, they were there. Then if not, you were going to have 2 of the 3 of them on the field anyway. Right. Because of him still being able to be out there. And I would love for the Steelers to get a player like that. There are several of them that could be that possibility in this year's draft. And honestly, having that extra second round pick is a good spot for it, either the first one or the second one, if there's someone that really jumps out. Sure. Especially if they're able to sign and not someone else like a Larry Ogunjobi. I could see the Steelers. Tell me if I'm crazy or not.
You're
the Steelers,
crazy.
Yeah, I know I'm crazy. Tell me if I'm crazy about this. The Steelers like to have basically everything answered by the draft. Look at last year. The big question, we've talked about it a bunch on here. Strong safety, strong safety, strong safety. Who's playing with Minka Fitzpatrick? The Steelers don't really have anyone. Are they really going to count on Miles Killebrew, who they know they just want to keep mainly as a backup and for special teams? You've got no one at strong safety. They've got to take one in the draft. What are they going to do? What did they do the week before the draft? They re-signed Terrell Edmonds. What did they do the Saturday of the draft that I think they announced on Monday? They signed DeMonte KZ. They still tried to fill guys without having to go into the draft that they didn't have a starter. To me, if you get your defensive tackle, and it's not like DeMarvin Leal cannot get his name in the mix to make something else obsolete down the road. I'm not downplaying that. He's a third-round pick. He's a guy that also helps with the versatility of the things that he can do. I don't kind of like Cam Hayward. Cam Hayward was not their answer on the defensive line going into his second year. He was not. Even as a first-round draft pick. It wasn't until a couple years into his career. My goodness, I can tell you here, because I have it up here for just a second, Cam Hayward did not become a starter for the Steelers. He started 0 games his rookie year and 0 games his second year in the season. Second season. What am I trying to say, Rich? Second year in the league.
His sophomore season?
His sophomore season, sure. He didn't start a game until his third year. And that was a number 1 draft pick, a first-round draft pick. So that's the thing with DeMarvin Leal. It's not like he can't get into the mix here. But if the Steelers sign a D tackle, they go in, let's say they bring back Lario, they got Cam, they've got Adams that could be the nose tackle. Then they have the freedom that if they do anything in the draft, it's an upgrade or someone that can take their time to work into the position. Thoughts?
Right, because then does Leal become the new Wormley, your first guy off the bench?
That's
could be very possible.
Gets a lot of
and
notoriety there.
And then, or as you said, do you look to get an upgrade? If you get into that second round and got one of those defensive linemen there that you think could play those different techniques you were talking about, more like a Javon Hargrave, do you then say, oh, we'll do that because we're not going to have to lean on this guy to be that all the time this year?
Yeah. Let's look at this real quick. I'm sorry. These are snap counts, but these are PFF snap counts. They could be off a little bit of the regular snap counts. It's just what I have up because sometimes they count plays that are then called back on penalties, but they still grade them. So it could be off a little bit, but they have, Cam Hayward played 800 snaps. They have him at 801. Lario played 636 snaps. Next was Chris Wormley with the 338. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about DeMarvin Leal being in that position, he played 175. If you're talking about doubling his snaps for this year, because Wormley, remember, he got hurt in the next to last game. So you're talking about you would double Leal's snaps if he moved into that role. Adams was at 281 and Alualo was at 291 because once Adams was more the nose, Alualo was rolling in there. So you're talking about multiple guys that are playing hundreds of snaps. So there's a role for it. So I think the Steelers have some work to do here. So I think we're almost ready for our big question. But what else do you want to have to say before we get into our big question here?
I will say this is that I'm with you. The Steelers have some work to do. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the work they have to do again, they're better off going into this offseason than they were, when the official Stephon Tuitt announcement was made last year. They're in a better place. Yeah.
Part of me is wondering, okay, what's going to happen for the Steelers in June this year? Last year was the Tuitt retirement, which was a surprise, but wasn't a surprise. The year before it was the DeCastro injury release retirement. Mm-hmm. Of where you have an expectation of something and then you have to figure out an answer when you don't have it. I mean, I don't know if the Steelers had talked to Larry Ogunjobi before the Stephon Tuitt thing. I mean, I'm trying to remember the timing of it. I think they had worked him out right before that. But it's not like they had something lined up long term and just needed Tuitt to retire in order to have the cap space. It seemed like they were dealing with that at the time. So I'm ready to ask you this. Are you ready for the question?
Bring it.
Okay. Now I'm going to change. And it's funny. You have no heads up on this one this week.
Nope.
I didn't talk to you about it beforehand. So Cam Hayward, I feel, was locked in. He's coming back. He's under contract for a while. Although he was named to the Pro Bowl eventually. It was the third time in his career he had double-digit sacks. The other two times he was all pro. This year they didn't initially even have him on the Pro Bowl, which is several per conference rather than starters for the whole league. I thought he should have at least been more in the discussion. But there was a lot of good defensive line play across the NFL this year. That's part of the reason. So you got Cam Hayward. You got two more spots. I'm still going to talk about two spots because technically you got two starters, and even that other one you've got to roll into. Now, before we talked about when we said people on the roster, like Benny Snell, when we did running backs, we counted him as being on the roster. I'm not doing that with Larry O. I'm not doing that. To me, Larry O is going to be grouped into a free agent.
Okay.
Any player that's not under contract for the Steelers now, I'm doing it because I think it's necessary. So I'm going to ask you, because you're going to have to answer for two things, but it's right up the same alley with what we've been doing. So you got to give me two answers. The other two positions on the Steelers defensive line, got to remember what I'm talking about, are coming how for next year? On the roster, free agent, draft, trade. You can say two of the same thing.
Yep.
But you're going to be giving two answers. So remember, everyone, hold up in the live chat. Don't jump the gun. I'll put it out there. And then we'll bring them up as soon as you go ahead and answer, and then I'll answer.
Okay. I'm ready. Are you
What do
ready
you
for
got?
my answer? Okay. One of them is currently on the roster, and one will be a free agent.
Okay. So that's what that you're going to have. So I'm going to say, I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to say free agent and draft.
Okay.
I'm going to go that far. I think if they draft a defensive lineman that could play some nose tackle high enough, I think by week 1 he could get there. We'll see. I'm hopeful, but we'll see. Here you go. Here we go. There are the questions out there for you all. Tell me. So it's going to be two of them. You could say both free agent. You could say both on the roster. You could say one or the other. Both in the draft. Both via trade. That would be bold. That would be pretty bold. Wouldn't you think?
That would be very bold.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping. Do you like the question, Rich? Do you think we did all right tonight?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So here you go.
Yep.
The winner of getting here first is also the winner who got to sit in my seats the last Steelers game this year. We have one Gabriel Golden, one roster, one draft. Okay, one roster, one draft. So maybe that means not a Lario. That means they draft a defensive tackle and they roll with Adams at nose. It could be several ways you could go with that. George Teston says draft and free agent. BF Bud says roster and draft. CD says draft and roster. Same thing, but reversed. Okay. Brian Brown says draft and free agency. Tyler W says one draft, one free agent. Steel Dog 88 said, "You're giving me 3, Steel Dog. It's only 2 spots. It's the other 2 next to Cam."
No, what he's saying is the first one now is the draft and the second one's free agent.
Oh, okay. I'll look at it this way. First one's draft, second one's free agent. Okay. My bad. I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's what we'll read it.
At first, I looked at it that way, and I was like, I looked at it the other way like you did, and then I was like, oh, no, wait.
But to me, I'd put him in opposite order because free agency happens first, unless you think that the signing's not going to happen until after the draft, which was Larry O last year. So it could be there's a lot of possibilities here. Okay. Mark Malone says one drafted, one free agent. Steelers Pittsburgh says one free agent, one draft. Great One says one draft and a free agent, and he goes specific to want it to be Larry O. Reginald Rivers says a free agent and draft. Wes says one when he says UFA, I think he means free agent. I don't think he means like undrafted free agent. I think he means free agent. I'm pretty sure. He'll clarify later.
He means unrestricted.
Unrestricted free agent. Yes, not undrafted. Because undrafted should be a UDFA. So yeah, so Wes has his terminology right, but that could confuse some others. But yeah, his free agent. Yeah, like me. No, I mean I thought that's what he meant, but I was worried about that. And one draft. Here we go. Rick wanted to know about the Jets DT. I already talked about him. Brought him up earlier. And like I said, he will be on my Steelers exit interviews tomorrow on the website. Joseph Brown says draft and free agent. Okay. Richard Adamson says one draft, one free agent. Steel Dog said you got it right, Rich.
Of course I did.
He was doing that. That's a good one. Okay. King Hutchinson says one draft, one free agent. Yes, and Wes confirmed that he meant unrestricted free agent because you don't want to sign someone else's like that. And John McComb says draft and roster. Draft and roster.
You skipped one.
Did I? Whose did I skip?
Sherry's.
Oh, I didn't see a number. I'm sorry, Sherry. There was other people saying things, and I mean, I wouldn't have
free agency and draft.
We're not going to miss Sherry. So there you go. Free agency and draft. Well, no, we didn't.
I wasn't going to miss.
We momentarily did, but we weren't going to overall miss Sherry. We can't do that
momentarily. Anything.
I might have. I didn't see Kathy's answer in here. I saw her in here early. I don't know if she had an answer here. So here we go. But so far that's all we got. If any more come up, we'll pop those up. But it's Super Bowl's coming up. Therefore, there's not a lot of crazy news. The Steelers did. That it was a bummer to lose a coach. We'll see if they even do anything specifically to fill that role. It was something, the Steelers did have an assistant outside linebackers coach that with that part. Don't know if they need another senior assistant defensive coach, but that could be some things. I would, if they're going to hire a senior assistant, I'd prefer it to be an offensive coach. That's just me. But there'll be enough news coming with the Steelers, but there's one football game left. I'm not even going to ask who you're rooting for. Doesn't matter to me. I hope it's a good football game more than anything. Make sure that you are checking out. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I might not watch. If you,
I'll watch. Yeah, I'll watch. It's football.
I got something better to do. I might do that. If you're going to ask me, do you want to ask me a quick score prediction for the game?
We could.
Steelers 35. Cowboys 6.
35. Cowboys 6. Wes did ask us about comp pick for Flores. The answer to that is no on two fronts. One, it's because he was not hired as a head coach. But two, more importantly, because the Rooney Rule expanded to coordinators, but not the compensation rule, from my understanding. It's still as head coach and GM. But the bigger reason is that a coach has to be in an organization for 2 years before they leave. Flores was only here for 1, or 2 seasons, sorry. So therefore, definitely there was no way for them to get that pick there. So, yeah, you know what? You want to see that? Watch a replay, right? If you want to see the Steelers in the Super Bowl, you know what? Maybe I'll just go back and watch the Steelers Seahawks again. Although that wasn't, other than the glorious 75-yard touchdown run, that's not like that was the epitome of fantastic play for the Steelers.
How about the Randall out of Hinesburg touchdown?
Yeah, that was pretty good. Then I still get nervous watching Super Bowl 43. And I even know what happens. I'm because the flashbacks and the nerves just come back. But make sure you're checking out all our podcasts. Like I said, before you know it, we'll have a different logo behind us. We'll have a different name that pops up on your screen with the alert. But it's going to be the Sabo Scho Bros coming at you just after 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night. It's going to
same two ugly dudes on a Tuesday night.
Yeah. So that's just what we're going to have to do. So, Rich, anything you want to say to close us out here tonight?
I will say this, although I'm not sure whether or not I'll actually watch all it, if or any of the game on Sunday. I will say this: I'm going to be sad that NFL football is over.
Yeah.
And I have to say that because we could technically say we could still watch Pittsburgh football if you want to go the route of the Maulers.
No, that's watching Canton football. Canton football. Okay.
But
Yeah.
I had to say that because I know what a huge fan Brian Anthony Davis is of the Pittsburgh Maulers. Yeah,
That Stalwart logo.
and and that's about as far as I'm going to go with that. Look,
Yeah.
hey, it when it comes to the football season, it's fun. It's been a blast. I love football season. And football season will officially end this Sunday. But our season doesn't end. Why? Because as soon as we're into the off season, we're technically already rolling with it.
Yeah, we are.
We are rolling off season because what else would you rather do than talk about Steeler football? I mean, I could probably talk Steeler football every day if you really, really wanted me to. It just takes somebody walking in my office and seeing either my terrible towel on the wall or my Pittsburgh Steeler flag or something, and they make they make a comment. Boom, that's it. I'm going talking about Steelers. Forget about it. So, we have changes coming up on the podcast side, but the changes are minimal. We're still going to be here every Tuesday night talking Steeler football. And isn't that what really matters? Can't wait.